that in mind, I'd like to actually transition to our first panel arrangement. So this is our panel that's going to be talking about how we can support producers in their businesses, which, we run a broad church in horticulture in terms of the breadth and scale of businesses that participate in our industry. So to talk to some of the programs that are available to support producers of all commodities and of all models and scales, I would like to introduce our first lot of panellists. So firstly, I'd like to bring Alison from Small Business Development Corporation up. We've got Corrine also joining us, and Peter, as an industry body leader who has played in this space, you are also going to join us on one of the hot seats. I'll check this out. So in terms of the way that our panel discussions are going to run today, our proposal is that I'm going to ask a series of probably pre-warned questions, if you like, of our panellists. And then what I'm going to do is open the floor for questions from the floor, and certainly, hopefully, some discussion either with our panellists or even amongst yourselves about what's happening in your industry relevant to the particular panel discussion. So, on that note, you get to be my first, I won't say guinea pigs, but my first panel, so please be gentle with me. And we are going to start off with Alison from SBDC. So I'm going to ask Alison, can you tell us a little bit about the programs that you guys have in place to lift business capability?
Yeah, well, I'm going to start with a question for the floor, because it's one I always start with when I do these events. That has anyone actually heard of the Small Business Development Corporation? Oh wow, that's way more than I normally get, so that's a good start. So yeah, the SBDC has been around since 1984, state government agency. We have our own board, we have our own budget, so we're independent. We've managed to avoid all the machinery of government changes and be amalgamated, so nice to have that independence. But what makes us quite unique is that although there are small business commissions or equivalents all around Australia, in WA, we are the only state that has a direct advisory services. So small businesses can call the SBDC, speak to advisors, get on live chats and emails, all of that now. And what gives that to us is a really deep breadth of information direct from small businesses about what their challenges are, what their opportunities are. Probably the biggest challenge that we see consistently, and it really hasn't changed regardless of timeframes or economic cycles, political cycles, is financial literacy, and small businesses really understanding those numbers behind the scenes of their operations. We certainly see that in the harder economic times and the challenges, that all those 1% things really add up, and that's what we really like to see, and also a bit of foresight into planning into what to do with those numbers. More recently, the digital uptake and AI integration is definitely a big challenge for businesses, and probably a skills gap that we're also seeing. So lots of businesses are doing it really, really well, but some are also just not quite grasping it, or maybe sticking their heads in the sand a little bit, not knowing where to go. There's risks that come along with that as well. So there is the cybersecurity risks and all of that. So there's lots of reasons why businesses don't necessarily uptake that, but it's definitely one thing that we're seeing. And then probably the other one that just brings it all together is not really knowing what support and help is out there, not knowing how to look for it, and also not knowing when to seek it. So we do get a lot of businesses contact the SBDC in crisis, when they really could have been a bit more proactive in prevention and resilience earlier on in detecting that issue and reaching out. And we're a really small agency. There's only 70 people that work. So when you think about most government departments, I think there's teams that are bigger than our whole agency. So what we do really well is connect businesses with other agencies, other organisations, other supports. We're really well connected with stakeholders, with industries, and we love coming along to events like this and just putting ourselves out there a bit more. So yeah.
And for full disclosure, as a bit of an advocate for some of the courses that SBDC offer, and they do offer them in their regional locations, but also online pretty usefully. We had a number of our industry development staff jump on for about 2-hour webinars on the use of AI in marketing and other AI updates in terms of skills updates, and they cost a grand total of about $20 a head. So there are some fantastic offerings in the skills programs that SBDC have on offer. And probably one of the things that surprised me, I'm sure you've heard it before, which is that I had this misconception, it's the accountant in me coming from private practice and dealing with the tax office, of what I thought a small business was and who could access your services. But in fact, the SBDC has a pretty broad definition of small business in terms of, you know, who can access the training and the support and the advisory services that you guys have.
Yeah, so we're certainly not going to turn people away if they don't meet criteria. That's not what we're about. But anyone that is 0 to less than 20, so 0 to 19 employees, is a small business in Western Australia. We also do some of our programs, so I'll talk about a few in today as well, but some that are for medium businesses as well, so more up towards that 30 to 40. But as I said, we're certainly not turning people away. If we do find that it's not quite the right fit, so if it's a consumer issue, then we've got referral pathways to make sure that we do put you in touch with the right people. So we definitely don't turn people away at all. And also we do a lot of work privately, so there is the public-facing work that we do, but we also do a huge amount of work with stakeholders behind the scenes. So things like workshops and training and advice, or getting an advisor out to do video calls or something to any meetings, we can definitely do that behind the scenes, and that can be exclusive for a stakeholder group. So as well as that public facing, definitely always just reach out to the SBDC and just see what services we can offer to you.
So you mentioned business advisory services. What does that mean?
Business advisory, so I said just earlier that the SBDC is really unique in WA at having an advisory service. So we basically have a pool of business advisors. They're all based in WA. They're based all around the state, and they do one-to-one advice with business owners. It can be on pretty much any topic. It can be ongoing. You can speak to the same person and sort of speak to them once, get a bit of advice, take some action, come back, get more advice, take the next bit of action. It's just a really unique service. A lot of people that work at the SBDC are either current or former small business owners themselves. I've had 4 different businesses, 4 completely different industries, but that's the beauty of what they do. So the business advisors will take that real world understanding in all different industries. The same with our panel of workshop presenters. A lot of them are small businesses themselves. So you can call from our website, you can book direct for an advisory session, so half an hour via Teams, video or telephone to be able to do that and just ask questions. As I said, it can be in a crisis if you're having a problem. It can be something directly related to your business. It could be more industry related, that you're not quite sure how to navigate something that's going on economically or socially, within your location. But absolutely anything at all that the business advisors can sort of liaise with you with, and either put you on a pathway within the SBDC to keep coming back, give you an action plan, or they can refer you to maybe the Curtin Law Clinic or financial advisors, financial support. So anything that you might need. But then you can also come back and have follow-ups with business advisors. So it's just about building those relationships. Owning a business can be really lonely, so having that free support from the state government, as I said, it's been over 40 years now, so the SBDC does business support really well, and it's really unique to have that service in WA.
And probably in that vein, and it leads naturally into the programs at DPIRG. Have partnered with the Commonwealth Department of Agriculture in terms of the phase 1 of the regional drought resilience planning. So I might just ask you, Corinne, about the Farm Business Resilient Extension Program and what that looks like and what that delivery model looks like.
Thanks. And we've just come to the end of what we call phase 1, finished up in 2025-26. And so we're actually planning for phase 2. So it's very timely to come today to start really an conversation with the APSC about what your insights are and what APSC and producer committees might like to see for phase 2. But what's happened in phase 1, there was a focus on industries, so and it'd be well known to you guys that there was a northern horticulture, there was a southern horticulture, there was a dairy group through Western Dairy, there was a focus on apiculture, aquaculture, marine and terrestrial, and some broadacres. So each industry, some of those courses were undertaken by industry groups, and others were done by consultants, a blend. But the whole focus of this is all funded by the Future Drought Fund, which is a perpetual fund that can't be used for any other purpose. It sits in legislation that was formed, I think, about 10 years ago. There's $100 million that's got to be spent every year, which is really the interest of the fund. It reflects the national drought agreements that's signed by the Prime Minister and the Premier. And there's an agreement signed by the Minister for Agriculture, the other Minister for Agriculture, and this is one of the programs. There are 8 that are funded by the Future Drought program. The Innovation Hubs being one, Future Drought, the Farm Business Resilience, which is one I'm sort of here to talk about today, the Regional Drought Resilience Planning Process, which we also have, and there's some other ones. So state and federal governments equally fund that. So we've come to the end of phase 1. It was delivered largely last year. The plan is for a 4-year phase 2, so that gives us more time for planning and for delivery. We certainly have had good feedback from the initial, from last year's exercise, but we've had reports back from the consultants and industry groups engaged. They've given us not their final reports yet, but interim reports. Certainly we're very happy to receive further feedback from industry people as to what they would be expecting to see out of it. They're reporting back that there's both interest to expand a similar offering of, I guess I'd maybe say 101 farm business resilience training, as potentially expansion, additional higher level courses, training opportunities, workshops, one-on-one sessions. So one of the things is that the program can be tailored to the farm businesses and the sector, but it is, the purpose of it, because it's the drought fund, is actually to improve drought resilience and with taking into account climate change. So focus on drought resilience and improving businesses' performance. And that, of course, as you all know, what you do in the non-drought years is the most important thing. So that's why it's the whole farm thing. It's not just plans for what you do in drought, it's really your whole farm plan. With some focus on natural resource management issues as well. There is no funding for grants. There have been previous programs run in the past where there was a plan and there was a grant offered. This is not that program. But the value of the program is significant. There's a small co-contribution, but I think in average, I think there's been a significant contribution from this program to producers. In relation to, I think there was Southern Horticulture, which was run by GGA. I think there were large number of 224 participants, and they all reported increase in their capability. In the north, which is run in Karanara and Carnarvon, equally that was fully subscribed, and there were some people who had been involved in previous planning and involved in that one, and they also reported improvements in their plans. But we want to know what we need to do going forward. We just don't want to rinse and repeat and sort of put out a contract and do it again. So first step will be to actually do further industry and regional needs analysis to work out where the gaps are, what industry thinks we should be focusing on, rather than just repeating what we've already done. So bottom line is there is a commitment. We're still working through the finer details with our federal department colleagues, so there's been no announcements on this. That's why you've not heard anything on that, because until the contract's signed, as you know, there isn't a program. But there is a commitment by both the state and federal governments to this, so it will happen. We obviously want to work closely with industry groups. We think this time round we'll have a bit more time. We want to work with industry players. Obviously, there are government procurement processes that have to be gone through to get people to do things, particularly if you're getting consultants or others to deliver those courses. But we're hoping to be ready to run again from the 1st of January next year. That's our plan. Depending on really what the industry wants, there have been workshops, there have been one-on-one sessions, there have been peer review sessions. It really has depended on what the industry and the consultant or the industry group has wanted. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in it, but it is an industry-focused thing, and it is a farm focus. So it has to be a primary producer. So I can't be a manufacturing or a food processing. Come and see our friends over here at SPDC. So that's good. One of the things we want to do as part of that needs analysis is work out again for those gaps, as Sam referred to, who's doing something that we don't need to replicate. We want to really be able to deliver some value on that. So that will be part of our exercise when we all come consult with you as to what each, we'll be focusing on each of the industry producer committees to ask that specific question once we have our contract signed with the government. So that we'll be expecting that to be July, August this year.
Just for those industries around the that are represented here today, how many of you are aware of producers within your industry that are currently or participating in the Farm Business Resilience Program? Wonderful. So for those of you that have producers participating in the program, I do encourage you to perhaps have those conversations to get any feedback that you might have that might be useful in terms of shaping the next phase. For those that haven't been familiar with it or haven't got producers or aren't aware of producers that are participating in it, Corinne, can you tell me a little bit about how the Farm Business Resilience Program differs from other sort of capacity building programs?
Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know about all the capacity building programs.
Yeah.
But I guess here are the things that we're required to do. We require our partner, our delivery people. There's got to be people have got to be engaged. It's the farm business. There has to be a plan produced, and that's a really important thing from a Commonwealth perspective.
Yeah.
That there needs to be a business plan that can be used by the farm business, but also to conversations with financiers and insurers and other sorts of things. So a plan at the end is really important. There's also recognition that there's some people don't produce a plan because they find the process valuable, but they, for various reasons, don't want to produce a plan. So we also have some flexibility in that, but certainly we're very keen to make sure that people have completed a plan, but a bit like plan on a page or the plan that Sam's talked about, that's meant to be a living, breathing document. One of the things we're thinking of is, well, what's the next stage when you've done a plan, whether it was through FBR related program or some other industry or government related program? Is there a review? Should there be a review or a refresh of it? So people bring their plan back and go, well, how did that work out? You did that 2-3 years ago. Do you want to refresh it? What do you need to do? So there's some options to do that. But having a plan, so again, it depended on the industry. Some people, some industries, so the pastoral one was done on some workshops, but then there were one-on-one kitchen table consultations to finish the plans. In others, it was a combination of online and in person. Probably people around the table will know. My group, the Climate Resilience Program, picked up this program, I think, in September last year. We also manage climate resilience programs, adaptation, emissions reduction, natural capital, and natural resource management. So it's bringing all these groups together that are kind of delivering similar things in this space, but we're very keen to work with what the lessons learned from last time that we can improve on, both from a farmer perspective as well as from an industry perspective.
And how do producers get involved if they're not already?
Well, the round's now finished, so there is no offering out there. Well, there are. I'm not saying that's true. I think Aquaculture Council are having their last session today.
Yeah.
I think there's still the Southern Rangelands are still doing some consultants they're doing that at the start there. So there are consultants. How the system is operated is that farmers contact the providers directly, and there's been a communications exercise. But essentially, the horticulture ones have finished, the dairy ones finished, the agriculture ones finished. We've got lists for people who want to do more. So they've been provided to us by those consultants or industry groups, but we don't have an offering as yet. So watch this space. I think it's probably we will come back through you guys to let you know what's happening. But first place will be consultation.
Okay. And I guess for industries that want to deliver capability programs to their producers, because I look at the strategic plans that sit across the back wall.
And I've read them all.
And I look at those strategic plans that we've got printed up that represent most of the industries here today, and producer capability is a consistent theme. We also have industries, some more than others, that have talked about the challenge and opportunity that comes with shifting industry participation. So we're like, we have ageing demographics in some industries. We have some changes in business models with increasing sort of corporatisation. So shrinking number of participants producing greater numbers of product. So we see this evolving sort of profile of industry, and as I say, it's different for every industry, and that's where that capability piece comes into play. So in terms of that, for industries that do want to deliver capability programs to the producers, what are some of the key challenges and learnings that industry trying to lead these sorts of programs should think about or prepare for? And I'll come to Veg WA, who's lived this firsthand, but I might flip to Alison first to say, what, as an industry trying to guide capability uplift, what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I think from the SPDC perspective, and we cover programs on so many different types of topics and so many different industries, the common theme for a challenge that we get for engagement is time poverty from the small business owners. So they've got so many competing priorities, they've got so many important things that they need to do, and this is just another one. So it's how to elevate the level of importance of your program to really get your growers engaged to be able to participate in that capability growing program. So I guess if you're going to be building anything, just keep in mind that the value output for participants has to match the time that they're committing to the program.
Any other comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm back that up. The majority of our growers are all small businesses, like 95% of them, and they're all working in the business, like day to day working in the business, and trying to get them to lift out of that and work on the business is really, really hard. So, and you say there's an enormous amount of other priorities which they need to sort out, and trying to inform them at the benefit they're going to get out of it, which I agree there's a massive benefit for it, but trying to advocate for them to spend the time to get out of that business.
I think one of the things, and I think you'll know this, all as producer committees, and certainly this was reported back through the reports we've received to date, is it's actually been with noting all of that, but once people get together with peers, there's the importance of peer learning. It's been really, and I think that's part of the carrot. From the FBR perspective, whilst we have our things that we have to deliver, we have a bit of flexibility. So sometimes it's also working with industry groups to say what's the hook that can get people in. It might not be farm business resilience. Not everything has to be the same thing. It could be a hook on something where you end up, perhaps sneakily or by stealth, coming up with a farm business plan, but you actually maybe get people in. So we have a bit of flexibility to work on that, I think, this time around, as long as we're delivering the output at the end, how we get people in. And so working with industry committees and industry groups to work out what works for your industry and your separate cohorts, because there might be whole cohorts or there'll be separate ones. What can we do to make sure we're matching the right courses, the right training to the right people?
So to put you on the spot, which I promised I was not going to do, you mentioned that you're looking at program design, obviously, with the hopes that you will look at a next phase. Obviously, there's federal government and state government collaboration that needs to happen in that respect. So it's not necessarily within the entire control of DFED. But for industries that would like to perhaps provide you with some feedback around what they think their producers need, where they think the gaps are for their producers, how can they plug in terms of shaping what some of that program design looks like, and how would they do that if they wanted to provide that feedback and input?
I think the simplest thing, if people have got burning ideas once you're fresh out of this, send me an email and we'll come and have a chat to you. I think we haven't connected to our official process yet, but we are also in the process of design. So we will have a more formal consultation process once we've signed off at the Commonwealth, starting probably in July. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to talk to people, particularly following this session while things are fresh in people's mind. You've got my email address. Feel free to shoot it around, and we'll start with that, because I think that's the most practical way to do it.
Fantastic. And I mentioned that Veg WA has lived this. Many of you will be aware that Veg WA partnered with DHERD in the delivery of the Building Business Horticulture, I've got that around the wrong way, Building Horticulture Capability Project. Have I got that right, Ron? Capacity, okay, sorry. I knew I'd get there in the end. I didn't at all. But many of you will be aware of that program that was delivered a few years ago by Veg WA, and whilst the participants that participated in that, reported some absolute success, it was probably as much a learning curve about industry-led and industry-delivered capability programs, and what works and what some of the unexpected challenges were. So for those of you that are considering working in this space, I will dob my good friend Peter in to say he would be a great person to talk about as you get to program design stage, because he can offer some lived experience about some of the absolute challenges in leading capability development in this space. But that's not why I put Peter in the hot seat today. The reason I put Peter in the hot seat today while we're talking about supporting growers in their businesses is because it's not always about reading a profit and loss, or how you run a social media account, or how you start looking at financial planning and performance measurement. One of the things that we hear repeatedly for many of our sectors is the burden of compliance. And I use the word compliance probably much more loosely than some of my government colleagues would be, because when I talk about compliance, I talk about every bit of red tape that gets in the road of a producer, whether it is traditional legislative compliance, or whether it's policy, or whether it's food safety, or whether it's auditing. I take the broadest definition of that. Like many of you, the vegetable industry had reported that there were consistent challenges, and it was a consistent concern of producers about this burden of compliance and the toll that it took on their business. Veg WA delivered and developed up a program to help address that quite directly, and in the QA Coordinator Project. And I'd like you to just tell us a little bit about what that project was, Peter, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, the QA quality program kicked off because of the need through compliance requirements, particularly with a lot of our growers when they're delivering produce to particularly supermarkets or export. There's certain criteria of compliance they need to comply with, whether it's the supermarkets with HARP systems, or Fresh Care, or with SQF, all these different types of compliance. So basically we went out there and put a program together, put a resource on the ground to help explain to the growers exactly what was required and all the different levels and stages and what they needed to comply with, but also to do with the why, and trying to explain to them why there's a requirement out there to comply. As you're probably aware, the food safety standards got updated recently, back in 2023, and most of these standards get changed, and I've lived through them for many years because of events. There was an event with watermelons, melons in regard to contamination, so they changed the standards. They identified a broader risk in regard to leafy greens, melons and berries, so they changed the standard. And as part of that, we had to go out there with the Department of Local Government to educate people as to why these standards changed. And by and large, it's just to ensure that the produce is safe to eat. Obviously, that it's a public health safety issue, that people have the confidence that we know that they know they're going to go to the supermarket, that there's very little risk. On a broader issue, and the reason for it is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but in Australia, obviously, in the industry, work-related injuries and deaths quite pronounced in Australia. Everyone hears about them on mining sites, on construction sites. But today, there's still more people die from foodborne illness in Australia than they do from industrial accidents. So that's what's driving it, and that's why. And that's why we go out there and explain to the growers on the ground, to explain that's why these things happen, and that's why we need to put these things in place. A lot of them, who find that people are doing all of this anyway, they're keeping records, they're doing the right thing. 99% without a doubt are doing exactly the right thing, and it's about documenting it and recording it and then demonstrating that they're doing it, and when the auditors come around they can show that. So it's basically providing them the information and the tools and the resources so that they've got the confidence in explaining and showing what they are doing, that it is okay. So, and again, as you said, this is just one small aspect of a very broad range of things that the growers have to deal with, but the idea was to give them the confidence and the understanding of why they're doing it. And again, like people who are growing melons, and they were shocked to find out that some people have become sick from eating them, and some had actually died, and to why and what caused it, and then what they were doing, and explain to them. So it's a big public health issue, big general food safety issue, concern with it. And it's interesting, I've been in other industries where they've made it compulsory right across the entire industry. Unlike ours isn't right across the industry. There's sort of pockets, where it's more higher, heavier burden than others, and trying to explain why there's a variation in it. And again, but the food safety risk is similar right across the board. And we also know that the biggest risk happens in the household when someone takes it home and they don't handle it properly. That's what's caused it. But the onus does come back to the producer to make sure that they're doing everything they possibly can do and demonstrating that, and then that's what the likes of the supermarkets use to help promote our food. So that's why it's so important.
So this program, and it was funded by the Veg Producers Committee through Feed for Service, this saw a QA coordinator hired and a dedicated resource hired by Veg WA, which effectively gave one-on-one consultation pre-audit, was it, or post-audit, in terms of guiding producers through what they needed to do before the auditors came through, what they needed to do post-audit.
That's right. Just to give them the understanding what's involved with it, to have a quick look at their documentation, to explain to them what they'll be looking for, what the audit process is going to take place, and what it's like going forward. And also the other part of the explanation is it's just not you fill out a form, put it on the cupboard, and you'll never have to worry about it again. These type of standards are always evolving, they're always changing, and there's always an onus to make sure that you're up to date with what's required. It's like anything like labour legislation or occupational health and safety. Like, it's not a set and forget. You need to be aware what the requirements are, and you need to keep working on it. And that's where that resource continually is, travelling over the top of himself just to go back again and just reinforce that. And when things do change, like in 2023, we reinvigorate that discussion and make sure that they're compliant.
So Veg WA has delivered that QA project now for quite a few years. So I'm interested in, and no doubt there might be some curiosity from the floor about what changes you've seen in growers as a result of that project.
Yeah, well, that's been quite broad. The number of people who are doing it anyway would just were very comfortable in the understanding that what they were doing was right. So reassurance and that confidence that, pat on the back, you're great, keep up the good work. There was others who were quite resilient and couldn't understand why they have to do it. Their father hadn't done it, so why do they have to do it now? So there was a lot of work having to be done to explain and bring them on the journey. And it was quite a broad array of some people who grabbed the reins and ran with it, to people who are still dragging their heels and trying to resist that change. So change 101, some people adapt to it quite readily and some don't. So I can tell you we've got it all.
Excellent. I'm going to open the floor very shortly, so start your burning questions in a moment. But just one last question, and this is for all of you. We talk a lot about producer capability and capacity, and I'd like to get your crystal ball about what you think the critical skills producers will need in the next decade if they are going to remain competitive and, all importantly, profitable, because profit is not a dirty word in agriculture. Let me just call that out on my little soapbox. But for producers to remain competitive and profitable, what do you think the skill sets are that they are going to absolutely have to get on top of? And anyone of you can jump in first if you're feeling brave.
I'm a public servant. I'm not going to say what I think farmers will need, but I think our job is to make sure we are there to provide it. I think, and whether it's in phase 2 or future phases, that there is a commitment from government to be alongside, to work with industry to achieve that. And I'm blown away by, I've come more out of a grain background. I'm blown away by what you just said in terms of the care that horticulturalists have to take, and I think that's something that we can probably build on somehow. But yes, we're there to help, not predict the future.
Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, look, it's a hard one. I touched on it earlier. I think to be successful, like, a business has to be profitable. Like, it doesn't matter what business in the world, unless you're making money, you don't exist. So you have to be profitable. But they also need to be able to step out of their business and to work on the business, because things aren't going to get easier between the amount of chemicals and what they can and can't use, to occupational health and safety, ACCC legislation. There's so much, it's getting harder and harder, and they just need to be aware of what their requirements are, what's expected of them. And it's hard, and you can't do that while you're in the business. You need to get out somehow and just get access to that information, which we're trying to help with, in learning what your risk, and it is just about risk. Like, all of these issues within business are about risk. So all of them pose a risk. If you not paying people properly, there's a risk, of payment. If you're not providing good, proper work health and safety requirements, there's a risk to your business. So it's all about risk. So it's about managing those risks, and you can only manage them if you know what they are. So you can only you need to understand what's going on and what's impacting your business.
Yeah.
So I might throw it over to you. What you guys, live and breathe the industry, either as a grower or as an industry rep, working with growers and producers. So my question is, while I've got, at least 2 people that are responsible for participating in the delivery of programs in this space, what other future skills do you think are going to be absolutely critical in the next 10 years that perhaps weren't as big an issue previously?
I think small business, there's a lot of work that could be done on business continuity planning and
That's exactly what I was going to say.
yeah, that's my, in my role day to day, I've only been in the field 9 months, so, and I go in, I guess, as you do, fresh eyes and sort of really listening and meeting a lot of growers. I have a little bit of that flip side of the food safety side of my own head. So business continuity, yes, it falls within the setup of your management system of your business, but ultimately, like now when we have the imminent issues with the fertiliser, chemical, potential, definite fuel issues, that business continuity of being able to go, hang on a minute, we could actually be resourceful here or pull back. So I would love to look to engage in something in the session to really encapsulate that process of making it a real livable thing that you can just go, all right, let's sit back from it. How do we deal with these type of things and make a plan for the future?
To add into that, it's not just the content, just the resources to actually make it happen. Mm-hmm. So how do we connect and bring more people into the industry in the future, whether it's for succession in terms of how businesses succeed, or businesses, successful, profitable businesses transition as people age. One of the biggest issues I think we're facing across all the sectors is bringing people in that want to work on farm in any form. And you just talked about the compliance issues and all of that, and why are people working so busy in their businesses? Because they've got to, because they can't get more people, so that they can step up. So to be able to go up to that level of being over, you've got to work in your business day to day as well. So how do we, we'll be talking about the education, how do we bring all that together as well?
And I know that future farmer piece, in terms of who are going to be our next generation of farm owners, orchard owners, and the like. I know the future farmer piece is something that's been made a priority for the dairy industry, certainly in their 5-year plan as well, in terms of how do we make sure that there is a pipeline of people wanting to enter the dairy industry, and then how do you support them to do it? Any other suggestions around skill sets, around capability that you think is going to be really important?
I think with automation technology, there's going to be a change of the roles on the farm, and I think that's coming, and we've certainly in the industry, prime industry, are investing in those kind of projects to explore innovation in that regard, and also crop protection for climate resilience. Our growers are very engaged in that, and you'll see a whole heap of netting going up all over the southwest, and it is threefold because it protects against pests and diseases, moisture resilience, and sunburn. So that kind of thing is what is going to be happening going forward.
It's almost like I paid her to be a really good segue into our next panel, which is a discussion about innovation. So thank you for that. But before we go into our next panel, I'd like you all to help me in thanking Alison, Corrine, and certainly Peter from Veg WA. And I would encourage you to pull them aside either in the afternoon tea or after the last session if you've got any burning questions or feedback either about the programs they deliver or how they might be able to work with either your business or your industry, depending on where you're at in the room. So help me to thank our first panel.